Supernova by Andre Fenton. What does it mean to go supernova? Is it that stellar explosion in your chest that is masked as nervousness? When did this feeling start? Was it somewhere after you wrote those words on the page and before you felt the courage to speak them into existence on stage? Did it feel like a fresh start, like the words lit a match that set off a new bang? But does the canvas of this galaxy represent the rest of our shared universe? Are all voices represented when you paint these pictures? Tonight, we connect these cosmic microphones to all outlets so we can all find magic in new places. Tonight, let loose, like you have the chance to loosen your grip of this gravitational pull, moving these atoms freely to a new beat, finding the rhythm between your dreams and tonight's new reality. These bodies are creating new constellations, moving their feet, twisting hips, sliding under moonlight. You won't be punished for having your heads above the clouds, because we know you're chasing after something greater. This is a temporary flee away from the rest of the world, where we walk away from our day jobs and finally open our eyes to daydreams. Tonight is a night where we slow down these cosmic brainwaves and splash them upon the canvas of the city. Tonight, we find the light within the dark. Tonight, we are nocturnal. Tonight only ends after creativity runs dry. Right now, the ink on our hands tells us otherwise. So get lost somewhere into the moonlight, and you come across shooting stars who found a place to land tonight. Welcome Nocturne, where the artist pulled the stars beneath the clouds to show you what it really means to go supernova.
Wow.
That was actually a pretty good poem.
Yeah. Hey, but wait a minute. Before we begin, what is this?
Yeah, you're right. That was it's a very good point to actually talk about what this is before we dive any further, right? So the disembodied voice in the background wants to know what this is, and no doubt our viewers, if you're watching, probably also wants to know. Well, guess what? You are watching SG2 on Space, the only weekly space show. You can find us on youtube.com/eshinga/streams. It is hosted by myself, Shen, as well as my co-host, this little bear guy. That was the disembodied voice in the background. I am kidding. That's not the disembodied voice in the background. Although this is a really cute bear, isn't it? It's actually Dr. Leonard Kramer.
Hey, I love the poem. I thought the poem. How you doing, by the way?
Yeah. What is that thing you say? You say better than you deserve.
Better than you deserve. Yeah. The poem was great. It reminded me. Do you know who? Have you ever heard of a author named Jack Kerouac?
No.
No. Okay. Of course you wouldn't. Well,
I don't know. Maybe.
So,
I read a lot.
So he was a writer in the 50s, in the early 50s, and then he kind of like he burned out like a supernova in the 60s.
Hey,
you know,
great.
But he wrote a book called On the Road, and he was sort of the father of the Beat generation. So sometimes, so you'll see pre-hippie counterculture kind of folks, and so he had that shtick, and that poem sounded a lot like his some of his work. So, but I digress.
Well, I mean, does he? So he has some works. He has a lot of works out there.
Poems and not really. I mean, I don't think he didn't, but he did write a book called On the Road, and it's sort of a sprawling travelogue or whatever about his adventures with a character named Moriarty.
Okay, I think I found it.
And they traveled across the country in a car.
This guy.
He tells all this stuff, and it's said that he just wrote furiously, the way he would start writing, and he would just continue to write and he wrote the entire book in a couple weeks, something like that, or even a couple days. I don't know. But did you find it?
Yeah. Do you see the screen?
Oh yeah, On the Road. Sure, I have a copy.
Man, looking at the title, I don't really know what it's about, but
it's just about his adventures. It's he meets people, he makes love to women, and he picks picks vegetables in California, and he goes to Mexico, and it's just a sprawling, like I said, a sprawling travelogue or story. It's
Hmm. I think I wrote something similar about my travels, but probably nowhere near as crazy as his.
Yeah, so
Uh,
pick that up and read it. It's a classic. It's considered one of the New York Times or Time Magazine best fictional.
On the Road
Or, so
by Jack
Kerouac.
Kerouac.
I think he came from Canada originally.
He's from Canada?
I think so, or northeast of the United States.
So the poem I read was actually titled Supernova, and it was written by a Canadian. I don't know who exactly. Some poet.
Well, we're a little off task because this is supposed to be a space
we are
show.
completely off tangent here. So let's get back on track. First of all, I also have to say, before I even go on, please support the show on patreon.com/SG2 on space. Thank you to our past supporters and current patrons, including my previous producer for 2 years, Atum Ron, and thank you to our present patrons, Sam Welsh and Kyle Baker. And like I said, you can go to patreon.com/SG2 on space to help continue to make the show even better. And before I go on, I do have to say this is episode 187. We've done this for quite a while.
Wow.
Can you believe it? Incredible, right? So incredible. But this particular episode is going to be, last time we talked about the Milky Way galaxy, episode 186. This time we're going to talk about something else that is very stellar, let's just say. Poem words intended. This guy over here. We're going to talk about supernova. What is that?
Oh, supernova.
Yeah.
Is that what you want to talk about?
That's. I thought that's what you wanted to talk about.
Oh, okay.
It's all you. Center it on you.
Supernova. A supernova is one of the ways that stars die.
Stars die?
Right. Well, stars die. Yes, and so that's one of the ways. It can be, I guess it can be broadly classified as like an explosion of a star. And there's like there's two types. And they're not very cleverly named, but type 1 and type 2. So I thought maybe we will talk about that. So
which one do you want to talk about first?
Well, I guess they're both very interesting, and the reason they're interesting, astronomers actually, astronomers are not often. Usually, an astronomy department is bundled with a physics department, so it's astronomy and physics, or physics and astronomy, and that sort of thing. And so, astronomers, are people like, and they like to play with telescopes and CCD devices and that sort of thing, and they're interested in stellar phenomenon, but they don't really get down into deep physics very much. Supernova and the things that happen that cause them. In some respects, are deeply connected to, believe it or not, physics and quantum physics in particular. And I guess I'll talk about I'll talk about the type 1 first. So, so type 1. Well, let me talk about how stars die. First of all, I think one time we talked about the Hertzsprung-Russell diagram, which is sort of a diagram of it's a chart that shows the luminosity versus the temperature of various different kinds of stars. And there's a main sequence where in the evolution of a star, it will follow along a particular path on this chart. And then when all stars burn thermonuclear. They do a thermonuclear reaction. So they're burning usually hydrogen, and they fuse hydrogen into helium. There it is. And so that main sequence, which is the diagonal branch that's along.
There's our sun.
Right.
Our sun's like a G star.
So as stars evolve from the early beginnings of the universe to present day and beyond, they will follow a path along that main sequence there, And then when they burn up, when they finish burning all their fuel, if they're below a certain size, usually they will just drop down to that island down there with among the white dwarfs. So you see the white dwarfs down there?
Yeah, the bottom left where
Yeah.
it says white dwarfs.
White dwarfs are not burning fuel. They are out of fuel. And they are only hot and they are only shining because of remnant temperature left over from the time that they were a main sequence star. You usually they're small, like the size of the Earth, but they're extremely hot. So one white dwarf is a companion star to the dog star Sirius. So if people know about Sirius, which is the star that comes up after Orion, because
Sirius is like Sirius B.
Sirius, yeah, Sirius, the Sirius that we can see with our eyes is a very bright star in the summertime. And it has a companion star, and it's been observed since the 1840s. I think, don't hold me to this, but I think the mathematician and astronomer named Bessel, I don't remember his first name, and I don't know his nationality, but I think in the 1840s, I think he described a wobble or some characteristic of Sirius that was that we now know was a white dwarf. So why am I keep talking about white dwarfs? Well, white dwarfs are a very common kind of star, which means that through the history of the universe so far, we've already processed a lot of stars along that main sequence, and they burned out and ended up in the white dwarf island there. So they're interesting because they are maintained by a quantum mechanical phenomenon called electron degeneracy. So they're maintained by electron degeneracy pressure. So now, what does that mean? Because they're gravitationally bound, they're held together. So the force of gravity is pressing down on them so hard. They're squeezing the electrons together, but the electrons can't occupy any more space. So they're it's basically it's like, I guess you could say it's like an electron crystal, and it involves except they call it a gas, even though it would be the heaviest, most solid, most resistant object that we would ever encounter. So my understanding is that you would expect them to have a weight, a mass of about several tons, like the equivalent of a few SUVs per sugar cube. Like if you had a sugar cube of this material, it would weigh as much as a couple of automobiles. So why do I keep talking about it? Well, so this electron pressure, degeneracy pressure, maintains the star, maintains the white dwarf, and it can't get any it can't accept any more mass, and if it does, then it will bad things will happen to it. Now the remnants of the star that blew away is still in there. So there's carbon and oxygen and other nuclei that are inside there. So it's not negative. It's not electrically charged. So it's electrically neutral. So the ions that are the nuclei of the substances that the progenitor star was made of is still there. And so it's a property of this object that if you start adding stuff onto it, that it will explode. And so quite often the white dwarfs will have another companion, like that will go into a red giant phase, or will continue along the main sequence, and it will start feeding material into the white dwarf.
Where's the right giant here? Is that?
Oh, I think they're all the way on the top. There are they?
Betelgeuse.
Betelgeuse is that's in Orion. That's in the Orion
Yep.
Galaxy. So So what happens is that this is the type. So the type 1 supernova is caused when the white dwarf has collected too much material for that internal pressure to withstand. And once the mass reaches, it's actually an exact number. It's almost like 1.4 something times the mass of the sun.
I
Then the
wonder
white
how
dwarf.
good your. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, and we'll get to why that's the case. The white dwarf will collapse, and the electrons have no place to go except to recombine with ions, and then and then the then it explodes, and actually usually it's carbon, and so there's a carbon. It starts to fuse carbon, and then it explodes and creates a supernova.
There you go. Chandrasekhar limit of
So
1.44 solar mass.
right, and so Chandrasekhar was a pretty cool guy. He came from I think he came from what is now Pakistan, but
India.
yeah,
Wow.
what's now Pakistan, but he was Indian, and he was going to study in England.
Yeah, I love it when you jump into history lessons.
Really?
Yeah, I mean it's
Oh.
interesting to learn about these scientists. Go on.
Okay. Well, he's a very important scientist. I think he lived into the mid '90s, so he was around for people to talk to.
Yeah, he has a
Yeah,
telescope named after him.
he has a what?
Doesn't he have a telescope named after him?
Oh,
The X-ray observatory.
oh yeah, of course, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So he was interested in quantum mechanics and general relativity, and so he was playing around with these equations, and he came up with the notion that, well, they knew about this electron degeneracy, so that you couldn't get any more electrons pressed together. And so he said, if you put some more mass
Mhm.
on there, then there'll be a breakdown of the um,
Amazing.
yeah. He did this in 1930 when what I read was he did this in 1930
Mhm.
when he was pretty young, like 20 something, and heading to graduate school. He was on a ship, on a ship that was going all the way from India. And then when he graduated from when he got his after he got his PhD, he went back to India. I'm pretty sure Bangalore was where
22.
he ended up. He was
Initial
22.
calculation was done when he was only 20. Wow, like he
Yeah,
discovered this
yeah,
when he was 20.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And so
crazy.
definitely a cool character. Uh, and so he discovered this thing about that. And so here's the other thing about. So this is called the Type 1. Actually, it's the Type 1A supernova. That they are. It's like a repeatable reaction. In other words, we see these things happen. They're not really that common, but if you look at a galaxy, or you look at a lot of galaxies, you'll see them, maybe every few months you'll be able to observe a Type 1A supernova. And it follows this reaction where the white dwarf collects mass from a companion star, and when it collects 1.4 solar masses, I want to say 1.44 for some
It
reason.
is 1.44.
So 1 well, that much when it collects exactly that much, then it explodes, and it has an exact characteristic intrinsic luminosity, which can then be used as what they call standard candle. And that brings us back to Henrietta Leavitt. If you remember, she was the one that discovered the Cepheid variables. So the Cepheid variables are a natural kind of variable star that acts as a the larger, the brighter the Cepheid variable is, then the longer its period, and so that was used as a standard candle. The Type 1A supernova is similarly, it's a kind of standard candle, and we know exactly how bright it is, and so by judging how dim it is in the distance, we can tell how far away an object is. And so this was so important that in the 1990s there was a group, and I don't remember who the group was, but they got a Nobel Prize for discovering that there's some kind of dark energy that's leading to acceleration of the cosmological constant. And so using the type 1a supernova, but I will say that that's been challenged recently. They've been collecting more and more supernova observations, and so there's some question about
I guess
whether
this is the for standard candle. This is one of the
yeah
equations.
yeah. So that's a
Interesting.
type 1a supernova. And so what I think is neat about it is that it's a quantum mechanical thing having to do with with the electron. So you pack it's the star burns out, and then the outer layers of the star get blown away, sort of conventionally. They just in the environment, and then what's left is the remnant white dwarf. And so white dwarfs are interesting for that reason. And then it's interesting because the supernova explodes. When the supernova explodes, it sends a lot of the debris out into the interstellar medium, which is that becomes a planetary nebula that then condenses. And in fact, we're made out of material that comes from most of the material that we're made out of, all the oxygen and carbon.
Yeah, I mean we're made out of supernova material.
We're stardust. I think it's
all right.
I think
we
it's
are
just a song. Yeah. So
we are literally stardust.
yeah.
Hey, let's talk about the other kind of supernova.
Okay, so there's another kind of supernova. It's a type 2 supernova, and this occurs when there's very, very large stars that will sort of run out of fuel. And so effectively what happens is the inner core of a very massive star, if it's something like 20 or 30 times the size of the sun, the inner core will run out of fuel, and it becomes sort of like the inner portion of the star has a kind of a core, and then the outer part will sort of sheds that material, and then there's an explosion. Well, no, actually, the way the explosion occurs is that the inner core runs out of fuel, and then it collapses, and so it doesn't have any. It collapses in the conventional sense. It's not like some kind of quantum exotic material. It just collapses, and then the star will implode, and then there's a nuclear reaction, a thermonuclear reaction, which then it causes the rest of the star to explode and throws all that material out into the interstellar medium. So it's an enormous explosion, and generally it will leave either a neutron star, which is
or a black hole.
Now the neutron star is sort of an analog. It's sort of an analog to the white dwarf, except that the material that makes up a neutron star are neutrons, right? And they are also fermions, just like electrons. So they're stuck into their lowest, their tightly packed energy, energy states, and nothing can hold them.
Can you tell me what this is?
No. Well, I guess that's what they're talking about here. So the inner core, you see, the inner core has yeah. So the see, what happens is hydrogen is the most common, most abundant element, and so when it
fuses into helium,
it fuses into helium, and then helium will then the star will sort of collapse and heat up some more, and then the helium will start to fuse. It's more difficult. It's a more difficult reaction, which gives carbon, and then all the other metals, right? Right down to iron. When the supernova explodes, usually it sprays out a lot of neutrons.
Iron, it just unfortunately cannot fuse into anything else. Is that what happens?
Iron is the lowest energy. Is the metal with the lowest it can't be fused or fissioned, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So
That's what I said. Like hydrogen burning, hydrogen turns into
that's,
helium. Then helium turns into carbon, oxygen. Carbon
yeah.
turns into all these
So
neon.
there's a lot of different reactions.
Oh
But
my
the other
gosh. Yeah.
Okay, so the other thing that's happening is, of course, there's lots of metals that are heavier than iron. That
Mhm.
those neutrons and when the supernova, both types of supernova, when they explode, will produce heavy elements. And I forgot which one is more effective at producing even the heavier elements. And it has to do with all the neutrons, with first of all the high temperature and pressures that are involved, but also the neutrons that are flying through the ponderable media and reacting with causing nuclear reactions. So that's
That
that's
that makes sense.
that's
This is actually a nice little pictorial diagram.
right. So the type 2, to me the type 2 is not as interesting as the type 1A, but they're um, typically when the type 1A explodes, nothing is left. The entire core and everything having to do with it's like the Death Star is destroyed.
You mean
But
type 2?
the type 1, when that explodes,
Okay.
nothing is left, and they typically don't result in a black hole. The type 2 will result in either a neutron star or a black hole.
Okay. And
So
type 1 is the one where the white dwarf like ends up
yeah,
getting more and more stuff from
right,
the binary
right.
star,
And
right?
they explode because of nuclear,
Right.
nuclear reactions having to do with the well, it's with the electrons recombining with the ions, is one thing, and then like a conventional thermonuclear reaction. But the type 2 leaves a core. It leaves a black hole or a neutron star. So
Right.
neutron
Look
stars
at
are
this.
interesting because they neutron stars are important because we have things like pulsars. So pulsars are spinning neutron stars
Hmm.
that have a magnetic field embedded in them, and I don't think that all of that's very well understood. Why the neutrons support well, I mean, I can understand why they would support a magnetic field, but it's possible that there's a kind of exotic Cooper pair formation. Do you remember when we were talking about superconductors?
Yes, I do
So
actually.
we talked. I think we mentioned Cooper pairs, and those are two electrons that are kind of bound by their spin. Well, neutrons. This is all theory, by the way. Nobody's ever observed any of this, so I'm telling you
Mhm.
this story, and it's just based upon the theoretical
Let's.
physics.
I mean,
They,
it's great to hear these possible theories. Go
yeah.
on.
So neutrons can do the same thing that electrons do, except that it's like a different regime, a higher temperature, higher pressure regime. And so if you add stuff to a neutron star, if you start adding material to a neutron star, it can collapse.
Neutron degeneracy, right?
Neutron
Instead of electron degeneracy, you have neutron
degenerate
degeneracy.
gas, I guess, is what you would look for, and in reference to a neutron star. So, and we need to mention Pauli exclusion principle,
Been
because that's
talking all this without mentioning Pauli
yeah,
exclusion principle.
he's turning in his grave. Um, so that's that property of
Pauli exclusion principle.
yeah,
No two
that
electrons in an atom can have identical quantum numbers.
for fermions. For
Basically, for all
Yeah,
fermions.
yeah. So so neutrons are fermions, and also there's a lot of neutrinos that are being thrown out from these. Neutrinos are a kind of um uh, a subatomic particle that we've talked about in the past also. Um,
So, can you go back and talk about what you were saying about neutron stars?
yeah, neutron stars. So
About how
they
it
have
could
an
be
embedded
supernova
magnetic
thing?
field, and typically these things, when they collapse, when there's a remnant of it, or if they're in training or a material, that they will tend to spin, and so they'll spin very fast, and these can spin at very high frequencies, like in the radio frequency regime.
Yeah. So
So
1/100,000 is the diameter of the sun. So like, and they have like neutron degeneracy about 20 kilometers for a solar mass, compared to about Earth size for a solar mass white dwarf.
yeah,
Billion tons per teaspoon.
yeah,
Compared to 5 tons per teaspoon.
that's more than the white dwarf.
Yeah.
So 1 billion tons for a sugar cube.
For a sugar cube,
Yeah,
this kind of star.
right.
So this is so when it goes past the energy necessary to form the combining electrons and protons to form neutrons, when
There's
it
no
goes past
place for
basic electron degeneracy limit, it stopped until it hits the neutron degeneracy limit.
That's right. Okay,
So
that's the point that I was trying to make.
right.
It's sort of a similar kind. They're sort of analogs to each other. And if you try to make the neutron star heavier by dumping stuff onto it, it's all self-gravitating. It doesn't have any place to go but into a black hole. I'm afraid it just it just it just collapses into other physics, as they say.
However, for masses, so basically above 1.44 solar masses, basically 1.44 times the mass of our sun, you can form enough energy is available from the gravitational collapse to form a combination of electrons protons, which when electrons and protons combine
That's
to
for a
form
white dwarf. That's for a
right.
white dwarf. I don't think we know what the upper limit is for a neutron star. You might see people try to say 1.44, but I don't believe that's. I think it's something on the order of 2 or 3 solar masses.
Okay,
That
and above that
and
is so it has like a neutron star essentially will undergo a possible supernova as well. Is that what you're saying?
the neutron star will not if you load it up in the same manner that you would a white dwarf,
Yeah.
it will not form a a supernova. It will collapse into a black hole. Now, I expect that there'd be a lot of energy that would be
I see.
uh,
Okay.
liberated by that process because things are being accelerated and spun around and so forth. So you would get gamma rays and
Type 1 supernova is only for white dwarfs, not white dwarfs.
yes, white dwarfs. And so it kind of makes for more interesting. I just find it more interesting somehow. But the neutron stars,
Mm-hmm.
there seems to be a thought that there's some geology on them, like little like in principle you might expect that there's something to do with the nature of how neutrons combine in this matrix
What
that
do you mean by
can
geometry?
well, I meant to say geology, actually, like
Geology. Okay.
maybe little mountains that are a few centimeters high
Huh.
and rifts and inclusions and maybe the I think that there's some thought that they will shift suddenly so that there's like something like, well, you wouldn't say earthquakes, but you might say starquake or neutron starquake in them. So, but I don't think there's very much else that's known about the nature of the
Can
phenomena.
we go visit one?
No, I don't think you can get close to them. If you put a neutron star next to the Earth, I believe it would tear the Earth apart.
You,
Why
this
was
little
that?
thing next to
Because of
Earth,
the tide.
it's only 12 miles across.
Yeah, because of the tidal. The gradient of the gravity field would cause the Earth to
Half a million times Earth mass into
yeah.
a sphere that's only about 12 miles across, or somewhere in size.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So, but some of them, so we detect them by the fact that some of them are emitting what, like X-rays, right?
X-rays,
Yeah.
and then we have these pulsars. So pulsars are a spinning neutron star, and so what happens is that the magnetic field gets wrapped up, and some of the energetic material that's falling onto the neutron star
Do
can
you see
get
this
out.
nice video?
That is a nice video, yeah.
Oops, I guess I gotta focus. So this is like kind of like processing as well while it's like rotating, I suppose. And just PC sound.
I think that's a thing, yeah. But the magnetic field itself is a little bit mysterious because it means that there's electrical currents flowing inside. So that has to be the case. But I don't know I'm not up on the physics exactly, unless it's something like Cooper pairs, and it's a very exotic kind of superconductor. But I haven't really seen very much about the origin of what's sustaining the
What's the sense of magnetic field?
magnetic field. So, but I guess I believe it's the most intense magnetic fields that are present known in the universe.
Wow.
So these are interesting things, and they're out there and they're real.
That's pretty wild.
So we were talking we were talking about supernova, but they're all sort of intimately connected together.
Well, I mean, this is like one
objects.
of the remnants of a type 2 supernova. So.
Supernova don't happen very often. They happen about every 50 years or so in the Milky Way. Or
didn't they say that Betelgeuse was going to end up in a supernova?
Yeah, you see that as clickbait all the time, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah. Is that going to happen? That will happen, right?
I don't know. I don't know.
The fate of that star will happen sometime in the next 50,000 years or something.
So, if they are very close to the Earth, if a supernova that occurs close to the Earth within maybe 50 light years could make the news.
What would happen?
I'm not sure. I think we'd be exposed to a lot of.
Will we die?
I think it might be characterized as what they call extinction event.
Yeah.
Okay,
that does not look good.
Yeah.
What will kill us with a supernova near Earth?
Well, I think the radiation.
Okay. The radiation from so just 50 light years away, which still sounds kind of far, but I guess not that far.
I don't think we have any candidates that are within 50 light years. So we're also we're here, so we have not had an extinction level. But
well, you're saying that, and then
well, we have had mass extinctions,
right, from impacts
and things like that.
Supernova X-rays can damage planet atmospheres up to 160 light years away.
Well, yeah.
I guess it's possible. Wow.
So, I think that would make the news.
Say the supernova is 30 light years away, where supernova within 30 light years of it that will lead to major effects on Earth, possibly mass extinctions. X-rays and more energetic gamma rays from supernova could destroy the ozone layer. It could also ionize nitrogen and oxygen in the atmosphere, leading to formation of large amounts of smog like nitrous oxide. What's more, phytoplankton and reef community will be particularly affected. Wow. So, but you can't even predict when these things will happen, right? I mean, you can just observe the stars nearby and notice, like, hey, this is.
Well, it wouldn't really do any good to predict it because, I mean, I don't think we don't have any resources,
right,
to deal with it.
That's true. This is I mean, there's a lot of beautiful remnants of supernovas out there. Like I see those nebulas, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I guess it leaves behind material to build another.
Yeah, that's the material that then later.
Tell me something. Our solar system itself, before it formed, there must have been a previous star that went supernova.
There must have been. I think there must have been many. And actually, that's been a question that I've had about it. There's a lot of the Milky Way galaxy is estimated to have 100 billion white dwarfs. Okay, so now those are not all supernova. Very few of those are going to turn into supernova. But the point about that is that what we think is that those are the remnants of stars that have burned out. So there's been billions and billions of stars in just the 13 billion, 13 and a half, 13.7 billion years that the universe has existed. And it takes billions of years for those stars to follow along the main sequence. Now, some of them, if they're smaller stars, or no, I guess if they're larger stars, they burn faster. So they can go along the main sequence, in 100 million years or so. So that must be the case that there's been many more stars ahead of us that have lived and burned out, and whatever fraction of those would go supernova are the ways that the heavier materials that we're made of, oxygen and silicon and carbon and whatever, nitrogen, is made, because that didn't come with the Big Bang. So I'm not exactly sure what I'm trying to say, but actually I am certain about what I'm trying to say. I'm just not saying it very well. I'm trying to say it seems like there's been a lot of evolution of the universe,
right,
that's led up to us, and it doesn't seem like it's that much
our solar
time.
system is not like it formed out of nothing. There was a series of stellar systems that formed, that ended, essentially, and we were born
I
from
just
that.
remembered another thing I wanted to say about the white dwarf.
What's that?
The white dwarf is not burning any fuel. Okay, they're just hot, and they're going to remain hot at the rate that a white dwarf loses energy, because the energy is leaking out because of the radiation, the heat and light that's coming off of it. They will last for, are you ready? Okay,
10 billion years. That's my guess.
Trillions.
Trillion years. What?
Yeah. If you plug the numbers, if you plug the numbers into the, like, Stefan Boltzmann temperature to the 4th power, and then determine the amount of energy that's coming off of them, and the temperature that they're at, and at the density and the amount of latent heat that's maintained in them,
and then it becomes a black dwarf.
And then it would become a black dwarf. And we don't believe that there are any black dwarfs in the universe.
That's a funny thing to say. But,
we don't think there are any.
Because
it's a theoretical construct.
100 billion years at least. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a pretty stunning thing to ponder.
So it's not even undergoing nuclear fusion, and essentially it's just living off its like existing light, and it lasts for that long.
That's right. It's, like the campfire has gone out, right, and it's just embers that are smoldering, and so.
Like the smoldering, like you put out a campfire and just imagine the fire's out and the campfire, the embers still burns for like 100 billion years later.
And that's 10 to 100 to 1,000 times longer than the universe has existed. So
so it lasts. The leftovers last a lot longer than the original, like, nuclear fusion reactions that created the light to start with.
So So I can't think of it. I can't think of much else to say about the supernova or these things that we're talking about. I had hoped that.
Are you sure?
Well, yeah. I'm done. I'm done. I think we talked about trying to make the show shorter. So
yes, right? We did. Of course. So, do you know what I want to talk about?
Yeah.
What I want to talk about?
You want to talk about aliens or something, some Looney Tune thing like that.
Some Looney Tune thing. Why would you say that?
I'm a little bit cranky today.
All right, I understand. Okay, so here, let's play this little video, and
okay,
I'm gonna see if I'm just gonna read it out loud since you can't probably see. Okay, let's see here. Let's get this going, shall we? I don't think that's the actual picture here. All right, so if I play the video, I'm just going to read it. Let me mute this thing. All right. So in the summer of 1950, Paul, whatever his name is, Epley, all right, was in the U.S. Army and working in Camp Wallace. I imagine this pointed arrow is this guy. on the James River in Virginia. All right, this is probably the Army
Uh-huh.
base. One day, for reasons he no longer can recall, he went to Camp Peary near Williamsburg, Virginia. While there, he recognized the MP guarding a bunker. They had served in Guam together. I went down and asked him what he was guarding, says Paul, and he said, I can't show you. So I kept talking to him, and he said, all right, I'll give you a brief look at it. So he opened the door. Behind the door, just 15 to 20 feet from him, was an alien standing in a small cage with a base that I don't know if this is just probably some random model.
Doesn't look well.
Okay, I think it's just a random model, but let me continue reading the story. Just 15 to 20 feet away from him was an alien standing in a small cage with a base that was only 3 to 4 feet square. The alien was about 4.5 feet tall and only wearing briefs. What caught Paul's eyes the most was the alien skin color, which he described as old orange-gray, dead-looking color. Despite the color, Paul assured us it was alive and seemed to be aware of his presence. Though smaller and skinnier, Paul found I'm moving back here.
Oh.
Found the alien's features remarkably human-like. The shape of the head, eyes, ears, nose, chest, arms, and legs were all similar to those of a human being.
Maybe it was a human being.
The alien was almost bald with just a little bit of hair. He also noticed the alien's fingers were longer than those of a human being. After viewing the alien for several minutes, Paul left the bunker. He recalls the guards saying that was the fifth one from Roswell, and they were taking it up north somewhere. In an earlier interview, Paul explained that the alien was transported from there to Fort Hood, Texas, before arriving at Camp Peary, Virginia. At that time, Paul adds, Camp Peary was the most secret place that we had in America. I didn't know much about it since they didn't stay there long, but I know you had to have top secret clearance to get in. All right.
Yeah.
So you could just say it's hearsay, right? Who knows?
I could say that they've got your attention, and yeah.
I mean,
so I always view this as some of these. I just feel like, well, I like doing these shows, and coming on and talking, and this is the payment that I have to.
What?
No, I'm not convinced. I'm not impressed with.
If you hear people's accounts,
I
you're
do
like,
not.
whatever.
I do not believe.
Mm-hmm.
I do not believe that the government is competent enough to
I
maintain that as a secret. Okay, I do not think that they could keep that secret.
It's
right.
Yeah. Okay.
It's absolutely. If there's one thing that's certain that they would not be able to keep something like that secret. It's just and people that think that they can keep it secret, that it's a different kind of person, different kind of personality. You have to have some kind of idea about kind of very cynical nature, or you're corruptible yourself, right? Mm-hmm. It's like I don't know. The people that want to believe all of that stuff.
Well, I think
but then don't listen to me. Like I said, I'm kind of cranky today. So although
hey, it's good to be open and honest about how you feel, I suppose.
Yeah,
kind of,
maybe.
Depends, I suppose. You're airing this on a live show, you have to admit, and you're playing with your chopsticks. So, all right. Well, maybe you should get a bear.
Where did you get that bear? Hey, what is that logo on there?
Okay, so this is a complete promotion of.
Is this?
Do you see AX?
Yeah, I recognize that logo. So, okay, Axiom Space,
the company that Dr. Leonard Kramer works for right now.
Yeah,
so they actually have a promo for their?
Is that licensed? Right? Is that licensed merchandise? There is that.
Build-A-Bear. You can go to build-a-bear.com.
Build-A-Bear. Okay, so we're selling Build-A-Bear. Okay, good. So,
I'm not actually selling it. I don't even know why I'm promoting this. It's just kind of cute.
Well, we should approach them and tell them to kick in some cash for us.
You can get Axiom to wouldn't that be kind of funny? Like sell bears for them. That's a side gig.
Yeah.
It'd be like selling.
What made you buy that? What made you?
Oh, this is my friends. I did not buy it.
Okay.
I think she knows about it because she probably has some friends who work there.
Yeah.
So
I have
You know
some
what's
friends who work
interesting
there
is that
too.
this guy's literally wearing a spacesuit. This bear is like he can take off his entire clothes. Like is that otherwise he's just a normal
Well,
bear.
Axiom has a contract as working on the space suit for the lunar environment. You know, so that's the thing.
Yeah, pretty wild.
It's one of the things that they've got.
All
money
right,
to do.
so that is something Leonard does believe in. That there's a aerospace company in Houston called Axiom Space.
I
working on
believe
space
I
in
believe
space.
in a lot of things, but I don't choose what to believe.
Right.
I don't
Okay.
pick the things to believe. The things those things pick me. So
All right. In order to keep the show at a reasonable time, we're going to have to end our broadcast. Look up because you never know what you will see. As noted, go on the show, youtube.com/shengo/streams, or look up SG2 on space and like, subscribe, share, and all that wonderful good stuff. Support the show, patreon.com/SG2 on space. And if you have Spotify, I did not mention this, but if you do, you can also go to podcasters.spotify.
I was listening on I was listening on Spotify the other day.
Oh, great. We will need to put up a few more episodes for sure. And then we can, get caught up, so to speak. For a complete set of episodes, you can, of course, go on YouTube and look up.
YouTube.
Yep, that's where it would be at. And you can also see,
like, share, subscribe, comment.
Exactly.
You can please
comment.
Yeah.
Comment is also good.
Yep.
And thank you to my friend Alicia, actually, for saying cool poem. That was sent way earlier in the show, so I might as well say that. Cool poem at 6:39 p.m. Local time. It was a pretty cool poem. So, all right. With that said, no more blabbing. Let us
good night.
Look up because you never know what you will see. See you all next week.